Welcome to the 100th episode of the Catalyst Health, Wellness, and Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Cooper, and do we have an incredible surprise for you today to mark this momentous occasion. You're probably familiar with the concept of the stages of change, which describes how behavior change occurs in our lives. Today's guest includes the lead developer of that model, Dr. James Prochaska, along with his wife of 53 years, Dr. Janice Prochaska, who in herself is one of the most published authors on the planet in the field of social work. They are the co-authors of the health and wellness must-read book, Changing to Thrive. Let me give you a brief overview of the 6 stages of change so we can focus the interview on some deeper discussion rather than having to simply review that during the conversation. So number 1 is pre-contemplation. You're not ready. You're not intending to take action over the next 6 months. Number 2 is contemplation. You're getting ready. You're intending to take action sometime in the next 6 months. Number 3, preparation. You are ready to take action in the next 30 days. Number 4, action. You've made the behavior change, but it's been going on for less than 6 months. Number 5, maintenance. You've been doing the new healthy behavior for more than 6 months. And finally, number 6, termination. You're confident with the change. You're not tempted to relapse. So those are the 6 stages of change. I thought you can come back and review this or Google it or whatever, but we wanted to focus the conversation on the greater depth rather than focusing on just going through these 6. So there you go. Speaking of contemplation, if you've been in the contemplation stage about pursuing your wellness coach certification, I'm encouraging you, please don't wait. The requirements, and I've mentioned this, you know this already, the requirements for the National Board exam change this fall. And that's going to mean more time, it's going to mean more cost for you to pursue that. So no reason to rush into it just to rush into it. But if you're planning on doing it in the next 6-8 months, you might as well save some money and time in the process. Our 2 most recent programs to qualify you for the National Board exam filled a full month early. So we added 1 more extra program in July. If you just realized the deadline's here, you've been sitting on that fence, this is it, folks. This is your last one. So it will fill early based on what happened in May and June. So don't wait if this is important to you. Always feel free if you want to talk it through, if you want to visit about it, talk about how it fits in your career, etc. Our email is results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com. Happy to set up some time to discuss your specific situation, answer questions, etc. You can also go to the website, catalystcoachinginstitute.com. There's a new ebook we put up there that walks you through all those requirements for the National Board that might be helpful. Now, it is time to jump in with our extra special episode number 100 with Drs. Janice and James Prochaska on the latest episode of the Catalyst Health, Wellness, and Performance Podcast.
I want to know how the goose hit him.
Well, that's for a later interview. That's for you interviewing me. All right. Well, it is such a privilege to welcome the Prochaskas today. Dr. Janice and Dr. James Prochaska, most of you know them. They've had a huge impact on our field, on our industry, on many people far beyond that. You've heard my introduction. The 2 of you, thank you so much for joining us. Special 100th edition, and it's just such a pleasure to have you today.
Well, special for us, too.
Well, I appreciate it. So behavior change, it's at the heart of so much in life. Maybe a good place to start would be discussing a difference between why people think they're failing to change versus the real reason they're failing to change.
Well, first of all, most people have an action model of behavior change, and they believe that change happens when they quit smoking, when they quit alcohol, when they quit junk food. And so they end up with attributions like, I don't have enough willpower, because that's an action paradigm. I got to will it. I don't have enough motivation. And those kind of attributions are demoralizing. You know, if I don't have enough willpower, why should I try? If I don't have enough motivation, maybe I'll wait till I hit bottom, which is, right. What an awful philosophy that is.
But so common.
And I think the thing is, too, most people don't know how to change. And that's what we've really been working to help people to learn how to change.
Well, that's the exciting part about the stages is it literally gives you those steps. You don't have to guess anymore. You can literally say, where am I? Okay, there I am. Now what is the next piece of the puzzle?
Yes, yeah. And what's great about it, it's inclusive. I mean, 40% of the people with the biggest risk behaviors are in pre-contemplation.
Yeah.
Well, most programs leave them out or exclude them.
Yeah.
And you can get a higher rate of return if you just stay with the 20% that are most prepared. But, you exclude 80% of the people.
So true. So true. All right. So the trans-theoretical model of behavior change, first of all, really cool name. But the more common term, stages of change, that's probably the one that people recognize more. Did you have any idea when you first published this research back in, I think it was 83, that it would have this level of impact 37 years later? What kind of walk us through what that journey's been like?
Well, believe it or not, as soon as we discovered stages of change, just interviewing like 50 ordinary people, I grew up in a factory neighborhood and I knew the wisdom of ordinary people. But what I had been working on was how could we take this fragmented area of counseling and psychotherapy that just had so many different approaches, how could we integrate the processes of change that are used? And when we heard that with our third ear, it's like, whoa, this is a new paradigm. This is going to be a scientific revolution. So, and then it's like, whoa, the anxiety, okay, not the burden of responsibility to make it so it's available to people.
Wow.
Jim was interviewing people who had stopped smoking on their own. And when he would say, well, what were you doing? What helped you? And they said, it depends. It depends when they were in the process of working on changing it.
Yeah. So like we would say, did you reinforce yourself for the steps you were taking? He said, yeah, that's more when I was quitting. Did you take and look to understand more in terms of about your smoking and all? Well, that was early on. And so, again, listening with the third ear of a clinician, we heard them talking about stages. And then it was like, that's the missing link. That pulls it together.
Wow. So you did have a sense right out of the gate. You felt like this could be something that will help for generations.
Yes. And our first article, I mean, it was basically based on those 30 people. And it was American psychologists, and I'm proud to say, out of 10,000 studies on tobacco across all fields, that's the #1 article most cited.
Wow, that tells you something right there. So we provide our listeners with a brief overview of the 6 stages of change from your book, and I've got it right here, Changing to Thrive, during the introduction. So they have the foundation, and they can rewind and hear it if they're going, wait, what were those again? Are there common misconceptions about one or more of the stages that now might be a good time to help clarify?
Yes. One of the most common is that people in pre-contemplation don't want to change. And when you look in terms of, millions of Americans try to lose weight too many times in too many ways, their history says they want to change, but they get demoralized about it and give up on it. With contemplation, they'll be seen as procrastinators, just putting it off, someday I'm going to change kind of thing. Well, they're characterized by profound ambivalence. The pros and cons of changing are absolutely tied. And, with Wall Street, and so they have real doubt. Is it worth it? Is it not? But when you talk about Wall Street, if you have doubts, you don't act, you don't invest. And so, again, it's like attributing to them things from an action paradigm that they're making the mistakes about. But once they start to learn and they get that, we say the first thing you have to change if you're going to change your life is change your mind and change your mental model. If you have an action paradigm, that's going to get in your way a great deal. And once they get it, it's like, wow, how come nobody ever taught me that?
I think, too, what can happen is that a health coach, once they get their person they're working with to action, figures, got my work done. And the reality is that there's a lot of work that needs to happen to stay in action. and the importance of really working hard for at least 6 months so that you can get to maintenance. So there, the coach really needs to stay with the client and really help them use the processes of change that are important to use when you are working to stay in action.
I love that you brought that up, because so often we hear from coaches, well, do I work with someone for a month? Do I work with them for 3 sessions? And our model has always been it's a relationship. It's a lifetime. You may work with them for, in some cases, it might only be a year period, but oftentimes it can be 5, 6, 7, 8 years, because life's a moving target. And so it's encouraging to hear you talk about that process and the time it takes and those kinds of things. You've spoken about the inaccuracy of the 21-day myth. We always hear that around, especially around January and New Year's resolutions and all, in terms of habit formation. And as you just said, Janice, it's probably closer to 6 months. 21 days makes for a lot better headline. Why is it, or how did you discover that the 6 months is so much more accurate than the 21 days? And does anything of value really happen in that first 21 days?
That 21 days comes from research John Norcross, former student, myself, did on New Year's resolutions. And what we found was that about 50% of the people relapsed in the first 21 days, in the first 3 weeks. And so media always wanted New Year's stories. And so they interpreted it as, 50% relapse in the first 21 days. The rest are successful. The relapse curve keeps coming down, and it doesn't level off, flatten out until around 6 months. And that's why we also talk about action as 6 months, because we want to see that flattening out. Just like with the epidemic, we want to see flattening out in terms of number of infections and all, and before we take other action.
So have you seen when people step into utilizing the stages of change that timeline is sped up a little bit? Or are there certain places where you say, well, if you step in and you're already at the preparation stage, you're probably looking at 3 months? Or do we need to be in that action section for that 6 month period?
Well, the 6 months, is a guideline, and
sure,
because in terms of with the flattening out, but yes, people typically we're not encouraging people to go to action unless they're in the preparation stage. But yes, some people can move more quickly. It's like yourself as an athlete. The more effort you put in, the faster you can get through it. But we also don't want people to feel like they're being pressured, more quickly to get through it. And so it's there is an arbitrariness. But when we say, okay, like cholesterol, what level should we have? Well, that's arbitrary, but it's a guideline so that, and we use this kind of thing. If you were going through life-saving surgery, would you give yourself 6 months to recover?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? Think of this as life-saving behavior change. And would you look for support from other people, right? And would you look to do what you can to recover more quickly and more easily?
It's a great example. Okay, so as you're talking about this, I mentioned Susanna, our Chief Learning Officer. She's the one that knows this so much better than I do. She jokes about certain people seem to race through, and she'll sometimes joke with me about, Brad, this is your issue, where you just are, boom, the pre-contemplation, the contemplation, the preparation, and the action are all squeezed into 12 minutes, and then all the time is spent on the action, the maintenance. Do you see the different, almost personality styles come out, or backgrounds or histories, where some people, they sit in that pre-con phase for a really long time. Other people go from 1 to 4 in a matter of a minute, and then they spend a bunch of time on the last 3. Any patterns with that you can give us some insights on?
The biggest challenge we find within the stages of change is to help people get out of pre-contemplation. The action model says the biggest problem is relapse. But what we find is just moving out of pre-contemplation, that's a small change, but it becomes a big change later on.
And tips on that? I've got a question a little bit later that will touch on this, but just some guidance on, because some people are told, if they're in pre-contemplation, you just wait until they're ready. And you would say, no. So any tips for that person that is in that pre-contemplation phase, how somebody can help them?
Well, first of all, unfortunately, the free quit lines for smoking, they're action oriented.
Right.
And when you call up, are you ready to set your quit date in the next 30 days? If not, call me back when you're ready.
Right.
Well, thanks a lot. Right.
And I think one of the things that we often say is wherever you're at, we can work with that. And it's okay that you're in pre-contemplation. And what we would like you to just consider is what your life could be if you weren't smoking all the time and you would become a non-smoker. How would that be different for you? And also to think in some of the advantages of not being a smoker.
Yeah, the latter. What we know in the meta-analysis of 125 studies from 10 countries, 9 languages, that the pros of changing need to go up. And so we might say, share with me, what do you understand in terms of the benefits from regular exercise? And typically they'll give 5 or 6. And then we'll say, there's over 60 scientific benefits. Wow. And I wonder if you would take on this challenge. See if you can double your list between now and the next time that we talk.
Okay. So you're not giving them the list. You're not saying, here's the 60 reasons. You're asking them to start reflecting on those.
Right. Now, these days we could say, well, you could go to Change into Thrive and you'll find
exactly.
Out this. You could check which ones are really important for you. And then when you check those, later on, you can use them. This week I'm walking for my heart. Next week I'm walking for my depression. Then I'm walking for my grandkids.
Beautiful. Love it. So the reflection piece, that's a big deal. That's a big part of especially this pre-contemplative stage is reflecting on my life, what I'd like it to look like, what it could look like, those kinds of things. Anything else you can flesh out in terms of reflection?
Oh, I think becoming aware, and one of the things we'll share with them is becoming aware that change is not action. Change is progress. And when you double your pros, you're progressing. You want to have feedback with that because otherwise people can get demoralized in terms of if they're waiting until they take action, it can be hard to keep them with us.
Right.
I mean, we know we were able to predict over 90% of the dropouts from psychotherapy with therapists that were not stage based, and it was that they were in pre-contemplation stage.
So talk me through that a little bit. It's fascinating. So you can literally predict 90% of the folks that will drop out, and this was in a counseling setting, but it would probably be just as applicable to coaching based on the route that the counselor was taking, basically? Or based on where that individual was in those stages?
Yeah, if they weren't seeing benefits, okay, if they weren't getting reinforcement, feedback, hey, congratulations, you've doubled, you're progressing. It's like seeing your cholesterol come down. You don't expect them to go from 300 to under 200, right? It's a gradual kind of thing, and that kind of progress. Otherwise, they'll discontinue the medication, just like they'll discontinue the coaching.
I love what you're talking about. Change is not action. I'm like double lines here. Change is progress. We have a little saying we call #better than yesterday. And it's the same concept. The goal is not to become you. The goal is not to become me. The goal for me is not to become Susanna. The goal is for me to be just a slight bit better than yesterday. And that's what you're talking about. Change is progress. That is so good. Midway through your book, you reference something called rule control, moving towards stimulus control. Can you flesh that concept out for us a little bit and how it applies to what we might be doing?
Yes. Rule control, when we're dealing with somebody with a long-term habit, or addiction or compulsion, but, habits, it's really under stimulus control, okay? It's like automatic. I mean, I know with myself, if I had ice cream and potato chips in the house, they were not going to last long, okay? So I had to take, and what's the stimulus in terms of what we'll eat? The most common stimulus for us is what's on the shopping list.
Yeah.
So if I take that away, then, but when in early on, the progress is more under decision control. Is it worth it? Is it not? Should I keep progressing? Should I put it off? And decision control is much weaker than rule control. And so for myself, where I have had some times where I had trouble with my drinking, I set a rule for myself. I'll never drink more than 3 drinks, and that's a rule I could live by. Mm-hmm. I also had trouble in terms of going into casinos, and so I would set a rule for myself. Leave my wallet in the car, take $20 in. When I lose,
I'm done.
And then you want to end up with stimulus control again.
Okay, so it's 3 phases.
New behavior is much more automatic.
Okay, so we've got decision, rule, stimulus.
No, stimulus control. I'm sorry, stimulus control.
Is that what you want to end up with?
Yeah, that's what you want to end up with. That now eating healthy is much more automatic, and in terms of drinking, how much to drink, it's like I don't have to make a decision about it, and I don't even have to worry about the rule.
So the process basically is essentially 3 levels. It's decision control, which is the weakest, rule control, which provides you some self guidelines, and then stimulus is when it's essentially natural for you.
Yeah, I mean, Janice she takes us out hiking, and we do a lot of walking and hiking, and she's got a stimulus, the app. It's got to get to 10,000 steps.
I love it. So those obviously overlap. Like, for example, I'm training for a triathlon, and I'll have a rule that I want to get about 2 hours a day in, and that allows me to not have too much waiting for me on the weekend. If I get up early, get on the bike by 5:30 or whatever. Can the rule control, I don't find it hard to get that going. It's just a guideline for me. Do you find those overlap with things that people are doing? Is it a mobile kind of integration between those 3, or do they tend to generally be pretty succinct?
Well, let me just say, I mean, you're the first one ever to ask questions about stimulus control, rule control, and just frankly, we have not done nearly the research on it. Okay,
it's really interesting.
It's more, let's say, a kind of a metric that helps us in terms of. So people
well, just makes it makes sense. Yeah.
Because it keeps under decision control.
Right.
I'm in as much risk of going backwards as going forward.
Completely.
And decisions are really
depending on the day and how stressed you are or distressed.
Did you sleep last night?
Yeah.
I love that. Excellent. Okay, so this question might fit into the pre-contemplation phase, so you can tell me about it. But what about the person that you're talking to? They're maybe in an employee wellness program, so they're forced to talk to a coach, or that's a parent talking to somebody, and they say, I'm good. I don't have any areas I want to change. For the coach who may be working with somebody like that, is there any value in moving forward, or different questions you can ask to prime the pump a little bit? Or does this kind of create a brick wall, if you will, in terms of behavior change when they say, I'm good. I'm fine the way I am?
Well, a couple of things. One is that we would typically give a person a health risk intervention, not a health risk assessment. And that tells us where they are with the big 4+1, the behaviors that account for the most chronic disease and disability and lost productivity, premature death. And so that can help us. And then it shows what stage you're in and it can give feedback. So that's one of the tools.
Yeah, with hopefully not being too sarcastic. Like one idea is, wow, you must be in the top 3% of our population. In other words, you don't smoke, you don't drink more than 1 drink a day if you're a woman, you walk 10,000 steps, you do some stress reduction about 20 minutes a day, and you eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day. Wow.
You're amazing.
Yeah, you're a behavioral athlete.
That's right.
I mean, but the other thing, though, more seriously, I do really feel that financial incentives can work.
I agree.
To work for those folks. We have an article where we compared our clinical trials to the standards found from Centers for Disease Control across 55 studies for worksite health wellness programs. And we then also had our case study where this was with a nationwide company, and they had financial incentives. In this case, it was, and health insurance is going up. If you participate, your insurance won't go up.
Right.
And what we showed is that they were outperforming the other, those 50-some companies by far, and they were outperforming our best results as well. We've also just completed a study where the financial incentives just produce outcomes that we've been trying to do for decades. So, and I like the fact you've got a PhD in performance science. Well, what we do is, it's like you have your personal best. You can outperform your personal best. Well, now we're saying we shouldn't be worried about outperforming no treatment or a placebo. Can we outperform our best? Mm-hmm. Okay. And when we do that, then we know we have something really worth writing about and disseminating.
I love that. So, and that fits perfectly. And I think that can prime the pump in a lot of ways. What about that person that just says, yeah, I'm overweight, or I don't walk much, or yeah, I know my cholesterol's high. I just don't care. Like, I'm just fine with life. Can you just leave me alone? Like, are we not even entering the stages of change here? They're not even pre-contemplating at that point? Or are there some things you can do in that case that might just help the process?
Well, in Europe, they came up with a stage before pre-contemplation. They call it emotive, and we use that sometimes. That is without motivation. And I might say, my usual rule is I won't care about somebody's health and well-being more than what they care. But I want to let you know, I do care. And I'm not going to coerce you. I'm not going to pressure you. I will want to help influence you. And so I will respect where you're at. And if you continue to not want to change, I'll stay with you.
I like that. I love that wording. I love that. That's excellent. Okay, so page 43 of your book, you state, and here's a little quote, our goal is to be a positive influence without becoming a negative source of pressure. That is so well said. I don't know if you guys spent 3 hours on that one sentence, but that is a beautiful sentence. For the coach, the counselor, the clinician, the parent, the friend, whoever it is listening to this, what guidance can you provide that will help us walk that line? Because that's a fine line. That's a tough line. You want to be that positive influence without feeling like you're creating this negative pressure, which obviously can send people the other direction. Walk us through that a little bit. That is so beautiful, but how do we walk that line?
Well, again, we talk about one of the first processes is to increase awareness. Well, I want to, help increase the awareness about the difference between coercion and influence. And the thing that as a coach or as a parent or as a partner that we need to be aware of, if somebody is in pre-contemplation, they're likely to experience what we're saying as coercion. And so I'd like to be open. I will do not want, and let me know. It reminds me of this fellow who was in with a drug problem, marital problem, career problem. And I said to him, if you feel me pressuring you to do things that you don't want to do, will you let me know? He says, I'll let you know. I said, how will you let me know? He said, I'll get angry as hell. I said, well, I can work with that. What I can't work with is you're not coming back.
Yeah.
And so, again, to be saying, because typically you'll get signs, they'll back up, they'll go quiet, they'll show the signs of, defensiveness. And I might reflect, I feel like I'm making you feel defensive. I feel like you might be feeling pressured. And again, I'm respecting where you're at, but I do want to influence you because I think that can make a difference in your life. And I don't want to waste this opportunity.
It's good. So many good tips here. All right. So on page 259 of your book, and folks are going to have to take a look at this, you've got something called a life evaluation as a figure. The feeling today versus the functioning today. I thought that was really interesting, and I think it's a very, very valuable distinction. Can you tell us a little bit more about how and why that specific tool was developed and how you've utilized it?
Is it okay to do an open book test?
Yeah, absolutely.
I got my
That's
book
true.
open.
I can't expect you to know what page 259 is, can I?
I say, you know the book better than I do. One of the things that we found was that when we assess people on a scale of 1 to 10, and on 2 questions, how am I feeling today and how am I functioning today, we found that the higher they were, the further in the stages they were likely to be, or the more progress they were likely to make. And what we like is to try to get it down to, like 2 questions. And it's a good way to track progress.
Yeah.
Because, if they're saying, look at today in terms of people, how many people are feeling well, right? Oh my gosh, how many people are functioning well? It's like the world collapsed on them.
Yeah.
And, if they were starting to, in terms of assess, okay, what am I going to do to help me increase how I'm feeling, and to help me increase how I'm functioning, then, that also helps counter the helplessness that so many are feeling. And I hate feeling helpless.
Sure.
And helpless is a major cause of depression and distress. So having that, in the other ways that we take a temperature, right, on a thermometer, and we hope it's not, over 101, but here we're taking the temperature of feeling and functioning, and we want that to be gradually improving. Means I'm not feeling so helpless.
And is the functioning piece, I'm just imagining, I'm trying to put myself in this situation and some examples, but with the functioning piece, the longer I've been doing it, the further along in the stages I am, the more consistent the functioning is, regardless of what the feelings are today?
Well, let's just say there certainly are times where we get a fever, right? We don't want it at these times,
Right.
Okay, so there are times. Clearly there are times where we're going to be distressed and we're not going to function as well. Frankly, we shouldn't be putting pressure on ourselves right now to be functioning as well as we would in a different world. And so we can, it's more like the acceptance that, and I'm not feeling as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's can be very much healthy. But if I'm progressing and doing some things, Jen, you have some questions about in terms of like what you're doing.
Oh, we had some quarantine questions that psychologist was sharing with us, and a couple of those questions that are very helpful, I think. What are you doing to move today, to move your body today? And what are you doing to bring some beauty into your life, either creating it or seeing it, going out and experiencing it? And those kinds of things, again, can help you feel better, which in turn can help you function better and to really, in a sense, improve your well-being.
Just as a side, to share with you, the behaviors that we emphasize the most, the big 4+1, smoking, alcohol abuse, unhealthy eating, and all. It turns out that a researcher from Stanford is able to measure our biological age for immune system, and then our functional age for immune system. And so I could have age 60, and my immune system is like a healthy 40-year-old.
Yeah.
Functioning well. Or I can have it like an 80-year-old and more dismal. And what are the behaviors that affect the immune system? It's the same ones we use for chronic disease prevention.
And which are so important right now to ward off COVID-19, to have a better immune system so that we wouldn't be as susceptible.
But it also, it prevents more of the worst parts of the virus. because, so many people have the virus but no symptoms.
Right.
And so it's more the sickness and the worst parts of it, because then your immune system is helping you to keep from getting to the worst. And it's why people with in New York they found people had 2 chronic conditions that died. I mean, it was the average. In the U.S., as Jan was indicating, 90% have 2 or more of the big 4 plus 1. Yeah. And so it's like, that's why when she was saying, if this person doesn't have any of those,
it's great.
We should give them a trophy.
Totally. So I'm looking at what we were talking about with the decision rule and stimulus control, and I'm trying to lay that over the top of the feeling today, functioning today. It seems like the more you are on the scale, if decision rule and stimulus is a scale, if we're further to the decision side of trying to make choices in our daily life, then the feelings are going to cause that to vary all over the place. Whereas if we're in the stimulus control, the feelings won't have as much of an influence. Am I hearing that correctly? Am I making that overlap accurately, or are they really very distinct?
Well, no, I like that. I like that. Remember, you're quizzing me about stuff that I love having data when I answer questions.
I understand.
So then I got to turn to reason and feelings. But the further I am in terms of, in terms of stage, in terms of stimulus control, the better I'm likely to be functioning. If I am, really stuck on making decisions, is it worth it? Is it not? Like in literature, dare I eat a peach? It's like with those kind of decisions, you get stuck, and you're not functioning well, and you're not feeling well.
Analysis paralysis, is that what they call that?
Yeah.
Chronic contemplators.
Yeah, I have not heard that one. I like that. I'm gonna
that's what I accuse Freudians of being, chronic contemplation.
I might steal that one. I love it. All right, let's have some fun with this next one. We just got 2 questions left. You've been married 54 years as of this September, if I did the math right. There cannot be a better testimonial to the value of the whole trans-theoretical model of change than that. Any fun stories about the role it's played either in your marriage or raising your kids, or combination of the 2?
Well, keep in mind, we were in love and we were married before we discovered the stage. It was okay. So we didn't, need that. I would say, for myself, I have felt blessed all my life. I don't know how and I don't know why. But in spite of whatever the discoveries I've had and the recognition, that does not make me privileged. Okay. Privilege means I'm entitled to whatever I want.
Yeah.
Being blessed means I have responsibility to give back, to give back personally, to give back professionally, and to give back like your coaches will do, to be, helping people to be happier and healthier.
I get a kick out of my friends using the stages of change. One of my friends says, I'm really in preparation to buy a couch, but my husband's in pre-contemplation. So I need to I need to outline to him all the benefits that a new couch would do for our marriage and our home and our living room. And I need to reduce all the cons, would put it in the way of him moving to contemplation and preparation. So it's fun to hear other people use it in that kind of way.
I used to do a lot of marital therapy, and with an audience, I'd say, okay, I have a husband and wife come in for marriage counseling. What stage is the husband in? And the audience will yell out, pre-contemplation. And which stage is the wife in? Action, okay? And what are the attributions they make? He is so stubborn like a mule, you can't get him to change. And what does he say about her? She is so controlling. And then I said, let's maybe understand that you're in different stages of change, okay? And that's a place where you might find some common ground to be able to pull together more. So sometimes we use that in our marriages.
I love that. Do you catch each other almost overusing it? Like I'll accuse Susanna because she's so good. She just is so naturally good at all this intrinsic motivation, motivational interviewing, stages of change, all those kinds of things. I'll sometimes accuse her as using her Jedi mind power tricks on me. Do the two of you see that, joke with each other, kind of look at each other and go, not today, honey. That's not, you can't use that one.
I don't think so.
No, like being a clinical psychologist and stuff, at social gatherings, people say, oh, no, you're going to read my mind, you're going to analyze me. No, I don't do that with my family. I don't do that with my friends. I do it myself,
sure.
But I do it with clients, who encourage me to do that.
How about something going on in your lives now? You've started this whole thing again. How many years did I say? 37 years or so ago. Is there something in your life now that we're all works in progress, that you're working on, and you're kind of see yourself moving through those stages of change right now with something?
Well, not long ago, Janice took me to a meeting to support friends of 8 people with a nutritionist leading it. And he goes and he's, showing in terms of here's what you can eat in the first week. And I'm saying, oh, no, what has Janice got me into?
An elimination kind of diet.
Yeah.
I said, all I can eat is things I don't like, Well, I went with it. And believe it or not, I mean, my goal became to get free from my sugar addiction. But without intending to, I lost 10 pounds.
Wow.
It stays off. I lost 2 inches around the tire on my stomach, which is the most important place. And It's like, at 77, you can continue to change. You can continue to improve your health and your well-being.
And the nutritionist gave us many, many rules that we had to abide by for 6 or 7 weeks. But then they became more stimulus controlled because, we saw that eating the sugar just wasn't a good thing. Is one particular change.
Nice. That's great. Love it. All right. Last question, just wide open. Take this any direction you'd like. Both of you, any final words of wisdom for those who are looking to help either improve their own lives or maybe their coaches, counselors, physicians that are trying to help people around them? And I should throw parents and friends in there too.
Well, I would say in terms of the wisdom from my own life is put friends and family first, okay? Put fun and playing and games first, okay? A friend from Princeton professor taught me, put your tennis and your golf into your date book first. Your work won't have any problem finding its way.
Yeah. Big rocks first. Yep. Love that.
And I really liked your signature thing, optimize reality.
Thank you.
I love that as a concept. And I really identify with that and think how important it is even now with COVID-19 and all this sheltering in place, how to optimize the reality as much as possible rather than giving up, throwing up your hands and giving up and not doing anything much at all.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, you two, this was such a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time. I know everybody probably wants to have you in their corner and walking them through this process and help them understand it. But you've had such a huge impact, and it's truly an honor to have you join us.
Well, great being with you. And again, I'll be a little bold here. If you like what you heard, you can follow up. And lots of folks are telling us it really, really is, making such a difference personally, and professionally.
Oh, absolutely. So. Excellent book. There's no doubt about it. And we'll add the title. We've mentioned it here in the interview, and I'll add it to the intro exit as well, so they have easy access to it. But thank you so much. Fantastic job. And again, great honor.
Well, good being with you and all the folks we can't see.
Perfect.
And thank you for your enthusiasm. It's great.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much. Wow. What a fantastic way to celebrate our 100th episode. We are grateful to the Prochaskas for their willingness to join us for this special landmark occasion. Thank you as well for tuning in to the #1 podcast for health and wellness coaching. That growth is due to you. So thank you for continuing to share it with others. Next week's episode features Alan Pease, a world-renowned expert in the area of body language. We thought that with all the masks blocking our smiles, body language is now more important than it's ever been. So who better than the guy known as Mr. Body Language to provide us with some key tips? You might also enjoy checking out some of the free resources over at the new YouTube coaching channel, which you can literally find at youtube.com/coaching channel. Now, no more excuses, folks. We have an in-depth understanding of the stages of change right from the developers, right at our fingertips. Now let's put it into practice, one step, one day at a time, as we move toward this concept of better than yesterday in our lives, and in helping those in our community do the exact same thing. This is Dr. Bradford Cooper signing off. Make it a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll speak with you soon on the next episode of the Catalyst Health, Wellness, and Performance Coaching Podcast.